again, yeah, beg your pardon. I'll start again. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen and members. Welcome to this planning committee, or D&M. I will go through the preamble to start off with and have a message. Our legal gentleman is on stream today, and I will just briefly go to him in a minute. But to start off with, in case of the fire alarm going off, and we're not expecting it to do so, it went off yesterday as a test. The toilets are on the left as you go out that door, and there's water just around that door there. This is a public meeting, and the public are welcome to listen to the debate and but unless you're registered to vote to speak, you're not able to take part or speak today. We are live on the web, so can I please remind members to use their microphones and remote to turn them off when not speaking. In terms of how the items will be presented is as follows. The case officer will present the report, the objector will speak, the supporter will speak, the parish council will speak, the ward member will speak, and members will then be able to, each in turn will be able to ask questions of each speaker. At the conclusion of the debate on each application, the members will vote and come to a decision. I would now like the officers to introduce themselves, and I'll start off with myself. I'm Richard Foss, chairman of this committee. Amelia?
Amelia Bolter, Democratic Services Officer and Clerk to this committee.
Rosemary Rowe, Ward Member for Dartmouth and East Dart and Vice Chair of this committee.
Pat Weimer, Head of Development Management for St Hams.
Rachel Head, Planning Officer.
Right, thank you. Before I start on the agenda today, I will stand down as chair for the first application because it's in my ward, and Councillor Rowe will chair that meeting. Councillor Smurden, who is a sub here today, has one as well that he will stand down during the debate on the second application, is it? Yeah. Yes. Okay. So I think that now is the time. Yeah, I think I'll hand over on the apologies now, if you like, Councillor Rowe, and go from there.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Our first application on the agenda this morning is at street application number 2735.
Apologies first.
Oh, sorry, I thought you'd already done that.
No, I did say from the apologies. Right. Sorry, beg your pardon.
Thank you, Vice Chair. We received a number of apologies for the meeting this morning. So apologies received from Councillor Brazil, and we have Councillor Callaghan substituting. Apologies from Councillor Brown and Councillor Spencer substituting. Apologies from Councillor Pano and Councillor Baldry substituting. Apologies from Councillor Pringle and Councillor Smearden substituting, and apologies from Councillor Kemp.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just one thing about the substitutes. Can I just ask David Fairbairn, our legal guys, are you happy with what we're doing as far as swapping around with the ward member problem? Because I can't debate.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Apologies that I can't be with you this morning. Yes, I'm quite happy for you to relinquish the chair so that you can speak as ward member. That's perfectly acceptable, and that's the same with other members as well. If they want to speak as a ward member and not be part of the committee for that item, that is fine.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Well, we'll start again. Sorry about that. However, the first application before us is agenda item.
Yes. So minutes next.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right, okay. So, sorry. The next item then on the agenda is the minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the 5th of the 10th, 2022. Are you happy to agree these minutes? Thank you. There are no items of urgent business. There are no items of urgent business. Division of the agenda. I am not aware of any reason to divide the agenda. Declarations of interest. Members, do you have any interest which you would like to declare? Councillor.
Any on the AOB? A member of the AOB or representative on the AOB?
Thank you. Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to declare an interest on the third item on the agenda for Councillor Jo Sweet. It's here before us, and she is, I would say, a close colleague, and I think it's appropriate I should leave the room for that.
Thank you. The list of speakers has been circulated to members. Planning applications. I will announce the planning application yet again, and then I will hand you over to the planning officer for this item, which is Rachel Head. Rachel's just down there, and the application is number 2735-22-HHO, and it is at Street Dartmouth. Rachel, would you like to present, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. So I've got the first application at number 10, the Platt Inn Street. I'd just like to raise 3 points which have come to light since the application has been called to committee. Firstly, the lighting plan has been received by the applicant and sent out to all interested parties. There has also been, recently the agent has let me know that there's been an error in the description. Rather than the extended driveway being impermeable, the existing concrete driveway will be extended and actually resurfaced with a permeable surface. So these details will be agreed by condition to ensure that surface water doesn't drain onto the highway or any other neighbouring properties, and that it remains permeable if the application is approved. And then finally, we've received 2 additional letters of representation. The first one raises the question about the validity of the lighting plan, that it doesn't take into account all measures, and has requested further evidence to show whether it will have any impact on all the neighbouring properties. This is not a normal kind of request, and due to the scale and nature of the development, it's not deemed necessary in this instance. And then the second comment raises the question with regards to the drainage not being in compliance with the SPD guidance, as the agent has now confirmed that it will be a permeable surface, which can be agreed by condition, and the site doesn't fall within a critical drainage area or flood zone, then this minor increase is considered acceptable, and the drainage is deemed acceptable by officers. So I'll now get into the presentation. So this is a householder application. It's a detached 2-storey property in the centre of the Platt development within the village of Street. The site is approximately 30 metres to the west of the conservation area. As you can see, I've highlighted that on the plan here just to show you. It also lies within the South Devon AONB and the Heritage Coast policy areas. This is just an aerial photo to show the location of the property within the Platt development and its relationship with the neighbouring properties and the conservation area to the southeast. So this application is a resubmission of a previous application that was withdrawn following officer concerns with regards to the height of the first floor side extension. This scheme is a revision which reduces the height of the ridgeline of the side extension by 0.9 metres below the existing ridge height. This is a plan just to show the relationship between the neighbouring properties. I will come back to it. So this is the existing elevations. The application consists of 3 elements. Firstly, the replacement of the sunroom extension to the rear, which is this element here. Secondly, it proposes a first floor side extension above the existing garage. And then finally, it proposes the extension to the driveway, which will be a permeable surface. So these are the proposed elevations and the proposed floor plans, which show the creation of the bedroom, ensuite, and then extended sunroom area. This is the lighting plan to show its relationship with the neighbouring property at number 14, which concerns have been raised regarding the impact on lighting on that property. And I'll just run through the photos just so you can get a glimpse. So this is the existing property in the corner of the centre of the development. This is looking from the rear as you come into the plat development. And then this is me stood at the application site looking towards the bungalow at number 14. And then these are some more photographs to show it from the corner plot, and then also an existing development behind the number 5. Sorry, it's number 5 behind the application site, just to show that a fast walk extension was previously approved at the site. I will go back to the... Oh, sorry. Go back to the proposed. So officers consider that it's the proposals are an acceptable and subservient addition to the existing property. The overall massing has been reduced from the previous scheme. It's set down and back from the front of the, set down from the height of the main ridge and back from the front of the property. And in terms of impact on the wider landscape, the extension will be read in the context of the existing residential development. The palette and design of the materials reflect the existing site, and officers consider that the proposal acceptable in terms of design and impact on the street scene, wider landscape and the nearby conservation area. In terms of impact on neighbour amenity, the applicant has submitted the drawing to show the compliance with the BRE 25-degree light test, which has been an adopted method within the SPD guidance. This plan does actually show the worst case scenario as the line is drawn from the bottom of the window, whereas the guidance said it should be from the midpoint. So the proposed extension passes the test by 1.75 metres in this instance, the distance between the line and the proposed extension. So it shows that it will not, whilst it will have an impact, potentially a minor impact on the loss of light within the winter evenings, it's not considered justified to refuse the application on the basis of the loss of light on the impact of number 14. Additionally, the distance of 18 metres between the proposed extension and the neighbouring building, this kind of separation distance is considered not to have an overbearing impact on number 14. Concerns have also been raised with regards to the loss of private and public views towards the sea and wider landscape, and also the fact that the property is a second home. As these aren't material planning considerations, these can't be taken into account during the determination of the application. Just like to point that out. So officers conclude that the proposed extensions are subservient additions to the existing dwelling, will not have a detrimental impact on neighbouring amenity, nor will it cause harm to the wider landscape, and therefore is recommended for conditional approval. Any questions?
Okay. Yep. Thank you for that, Rachel. Members, do you have any questions for our planning officer, please? Councillor Snowden.
Within the representations, there's quite a lot of comment on conservation area.
Yeah.
From what you're showing, I mean these are quite modern houses, which so I don't quite. Can you explain the relevance of conservation area? Because I'm assuming that are these houses within these modern houses within a conservation area?
No, so this plan shows the outline of the existing street conservation area. So the modern houses do not fall, and the site area does not fall within the street conservation area. That's the kind of purple outline is the outline of the conservation area.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have Councillor Spencer?
Can I ask what consideration was given to the street neighbourhood plan in the assessment?
Yes, the street neighbourhood plan, as outlined in the report, was considered in terms of design, kind of dark skies, and the impact of the drainage as well.
Councillor Baldry.
Thank you, Chairman. Construction management plan, a objector has said they need a construction management plan. You explain in the report why you don't think it is necessary. Why do you think the person who asked for the construction management plan thought it was necessary?
I'm not sure why they thought it was necessary. I couldn't answer.
No one can answer that question? Mr. Wyman?
I think the only person who can answer the question is the person who made the comment. I mean, it's not the scale of the development isn't one where we would normally require a construction management plan.
Sorry, Chairman, I'm not arguing one way or the other. I just wondered why anyone would think a CMP was necessary on this single piece of work.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further questions to the planning officer? If not, we will move on to firstly we will move on to the objector, which is Nicola Cullen, who I believe you have some slides. Would you like to come up to here, please? And you have 3 minutes.
Good morning, councillors. I'm representing all those people who have objected to number 10, the plat. Next slide, please. This morning I'll be talking about the over-dominance and overshadowing, the neighbourhood and visual immunity. I won't talk about the hard standing because that's been addressed. Voice and influence of the parish council and the parishioners. The main focus will be on the roof line. Next slide, please. Sorry, there we go. So this diagram was submitted by the architect a couple of weeks ago, which has been given to the public. But on this drawing, there is no horizontal scale, and the angle measurement is taken from the wrong area of the window of the bungalow. And which window? We move on to the next slide, which shows the overshadowing of the bungalow over the current garage roof line. This is taken by me. It clearly shows the impact of the light that is going to have on the bungalow number 14. 25-degree rule, which has been cited, is used by very few planning authorities because it is often disputed. Next slide, please. Moving on to the neighbourhood and visual amenity. So policy Dev 1 does state that new development provides for satisfactory daylight, sunlight, outlook and privacy. This proposal does degrade number 14 sunlight time, as seen in my photos, and it's already impacted on the mental health of the permanent residents due to the stress of the planning application, the fear of loss of outlook, privacy and skylight. The residential visual amenity threshold will be exceeded if the roof line is raised. It will overwhelm views in all directions and it is inescapably dominant. Going back to what the planning officer said, previous extensions within the plat have not impacted on neighbours and precedent should not be set by previous planning applications. Next slide, please. The hard standing, this has already been addressed. So we move on to voice and opinion of the parish council and its parishioners. In accordance with the joint local plan, parish councils are the predominant influence in shaping communities. Twice, the applicants have ignored the direction of the parish council to preserve the current roofline of the bedroom extension. The applicants can get this bedroom in their second home without raising the roofline, as is seen at number 8, the plat. Final slide, please. To conclude, we are appealing to you councillors, this committee, to support the numerous objections from the permanent residents of the plat. Those people who keep the community functioning via the Village Hall Committee, running the community pub, supporting the church and litter picking, for example. The applicants are second homeowners who have shown no inclination to move. This extension will change the character and the setting of the plat to the detriment of those who live here now. If this application is approved, it will reduce our quality of life. This is not considerate or respectful planning. Please,
time is up. Okay, last sentence, please.
Please support us by refusing this extension application follow the recommendations given twice by the Parish Council that the garage roof line should not be raised, therefore maintaining the visual amenities of all concerned as well as protecting the light. Surely the strength of objections and given by the Parish Council cannot be ignored. Thank you.
Members, do any of you have any questions for the objector? Councillor Hodgson, please.
Thank you. Can we go back to the slide which showed the shadow on the bungalow? Was that? Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So are you saying that so obviously that's the current situation. So if there's a raise on that side extension of number 10, where will the shadow increase on the bungalow?
It will completely engulf the bungalow.
So it goes to that side where you were seeing the sun now will not go.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions for the objector? No? Thank you. You likewise have 3 minutes. Thank you.
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
My wife and I have put the plans in, and we plan to move to the flat full time next year and need a 4th bedroom in order to accommodate the family. When they visit, the 3rd bedroom at the moment, our property, and both said the only place to add the bedroom was above the garage, and plans were drawn up and submitted for extensions similar to number 5. The planning officer was generally satisfied by the design, but asked if we could consider making the roof subservient. We received objections from the neighbours and suggestions from the Parish Council to have a flat-roofed box dormer, as has been added to number 8, the plat, and we consulted our architect and asked him to make the roof as low as possible. Our architect informed us that a flat roof and box dormer extending from the main house would be considered to be overbearing and disproportionate and would not fit in with the design of the estate and be very visible. The dormer on number 8 is not visible from the estate, it's on the other side of the house. The new plan was submitted with a significantly lower roof, as low as the architect could make it, and dormer windows. The designs and size of the dormer windows match the gables of the house and been kept small in size. Because the design has changed, it's had to be a new application. We're a corner plot and the extension is well away from adjacent properties, so maintains the open aspect of the estate and should not compromise the street scene. You can see how open it is. We do not think slightly raising the roof and adding dormers front and back will overdevelop the plot. Can I have the next slide, please? The windows will be of modest size and they do not look directly into any properties, and so there's no loss of privacy. Because daylight and shadowing on number 14 was a concern, the 25-degree assessment was requested by the planning officer and the measurement concluded that the roof was well within it. The heritage statement established that the first floor extension, by reason of its modest scale and matching materials, will not adversely affect the setting in the designated area. In the plat, only a small proportion of the properties have objected, 5 out of 21, with multiple objections from 4 of these, and most objections were actually from number 5, the property that already has the full height extension. A number of the residents of the plat have said to us that they're happy with our plans and don't understand why we've received so many objections. We have tried to address the issues raised by our neighbours with this resubmission, and some of our objections state quite strongly that we are currently second homeowners, but this application is to allow us to move full-time to the property. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Well within your time. Thank you. So, members, do you have any questions for Mr. Wells, please, the applicant? No? No? Well, thank you. Call upon Councillor Graham Campbell, please, to come and speak for the Parish Council. You also likewise have 3 minutes, sir. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm a parish councillor at Street, and I've been delegated to come and talk here. We, as a parish council, had two meetings about this, one for the original plan and one for the adapted plan. And there were extensive objections, representations made by a good number of neighbours of this particular site. And we discussed it fully with them, and we discussed it ourselves afterwards. And basically, the strong representations were again, for the second time, convinced us that there was probably a good case to be made that the South Hants District Council's own guidance on over-dominance, overlooking and loss of light could be made. And we felt, therefore, bearing in mind this very strong feeling and considerable objections from the neighbours, that we, as a parish council, should object to it and enable it to have a full discussion at this meeting. There's no more things that I need to say, really, because it's already been said. So, if there are any questions, I can answer them.
Thank you, members. Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you.
Okay.
The gentleman who spoke before you said that there was just 5 of the residents there who had objected, of whom 4 had made, repeated objections. You're saying number of objections, so objectors. What kind of numbers are you?
I haven't got an exact count, but we were sitting in there, and there were probably 10, 12 people in there. Some of them may well have been from the same house. Not all of them have been. There were a couple of couples there as well. I think there were 10 or 12 people at the meeting, and they all gave. It was a lengthy meeting, in fact. Just on this one issue.
Yeah, just wanted to understand that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to ask a question? Councillor Taylor?
Yes, the applicant has said that there would be no overlooking, and you just said there would be from the development and the windows and such.
So, overlooking meaning what?
Oh, well, you said that the new application would not overlook in the way of neighbours.
I didn't say that. No.
That's right. But you just said there would be.
Well, there are dormer windows, and one dormer window faces number 5. One dormer window faces the opposite way, down towards the bungalow on the right. And they aren't there now. So there are new windows facing other houses.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions they'd like to ask? No. So, thank you. I will then ask Councillor Foss as the ward.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. When this application came in at the beginning, on the face of it, there was only one real issue, was it's a householder application, that an extension, and there are some already similar on the site. I didn't think it was too much of a problem, but then I have been receiving emails from quite a lot of people saying that they had concerns about the light situation. Now, as you can see today, I wasn't in possession of the diagram showing the line to the bottom of the window until you all were only the other day, at the time when I made the decision. So whether you can argue that is correct, or whether that the picture shown by the objector overshadowing the house with the shadow on the house, which is correct. So it's one of those applications normally you probably wouldn't have even come to committee, but with all that's been said and the doubts, I decided to bring it to committee to get your views. Basically, that's what we're here for, to hear how you view the application. You've seen the evidence from the objector and the supporter, and I will leave it there, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Foss. Does anyone want to ask Councillor Foss any questions, or Councillor Long?
Chairman, I'm not sure whether the question is to Councillor Foss or the planning officer, because obviously in the discussions and the various pictures that have been shown, do we know what period overshadowing and loss of sunlight occurs, you know, sort of what part during the day in the sort of summer, winter, because that's not clear even from the 25-degree rule as to when that period of loss of any light would be.
No, this is the kind of a standard test to show, so it wouldn't kind of indicate what time of day it would lose the sunlight.
I think it would be incorrect for us to guess when we don't have that information in front of us. I would suspect the impact is more likely to be more felt in spring, winter, when the sun doesn't get up quite as high, but we haven't got any indications in terms of how many minutes during what months.
Thank you. Members, shall we move forward to the debate? Who would like to speak first? Councillor Spencer.
I asked a question earlier about the street neighbourhood plan, and I didn't have at that point the detail, but there are 5 components to the neighbourhood plan which are mentioned down here, which aren't elaborated on in any particular way. So I'm wondering whether elaborating on those has any relevance at all. And can I get some guidance on whether the first speaker's comments, and I apologise if I've got this wrong, but there was a lot of emphasis on the fact that this was second homeowner, and is there any difference between first and second homeowner applications, which I assume not, and from your shaking head, thank you. So just the observations on the street neighbourhood plan without a huge amount of detail.
Thank you. Who would like to go speak now? Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you. If I may, it's a slight question for the officer again. I think it seems to me one of the things that seems to be emerging is the kind of the visual impact that, an enlarging building is likely to have potentially more than the actual number of, actual inches or metres increase. It's potentially just, it's a relative thing, isn't it, to all the other buildings? And often what we look at is potential screening. Now, I know screening doesn't happen overnight. If you start putting some little sort of, street scale trees and things, which can look really nice, they can make a big difference, but they don't, you might wait 10 years. So that's not an ideal answer. But has that been considered for this? Because I know looking at the garden, there are some things that maybe could be allowed to just grow up a bit. I mean, is that any way that could actually assist with kind of, sort of moderating the impact on the street scene?
I'm not sure that letting anything grow up would necessarily have that significant impact in terms of raising the roof, because they'd have to get so high, and then there's an issue around does the planting itself then look an alien feature? And if you're planting something that's relatively high in front of the property, does that in itself then create the issue of blocking out the sun depending on what height it gets? So I think my personal view from what I've heard is I think the key issue is more around the loss of the sunlight rather than the actual design impact on the street scene. And obviously the impact on the street scene and its scale goes hand in hand with the loss of light. But the impression I've got is that it's more about the greater concern is about that loss of sunlight rather than the actual design of it per se in terms of being out of character.
Councillor Boltry.
Thank you, Chairman. I've been impressed by the number of objections. I always would take that into account, and especially I take particular note of the objections from the parish council, which always weighs heavily with me as a reason to listen to what they've got to say. In summary, what seems to be coming out is I have to consider whether there are reasons to refuse this on planning grounds. And the 2 planning grounds which have been mentioned are overlooking and loss of light. I've not been convinced at all about the argument about overlooking. And equally with loss of light, I don't think there is a convincing case has been made. And so, Chairman, I would like to propose a conditional approval in accordance with officer recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Baldry. Do we have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Do you wish to speak or not? Councillor Smurden?
Can the officer go back? I think there's a photograph of a house which has been in the part of the development which has already been, that one, I think you said that one had been extended in the same way. How far away is that one from the one which is proposed here?
So this is the application site, and then number 5 is the application that's done the side extension.
Directly opposite?
Yeah, behind.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
I'll say something if I can.
Councillor Foss?
Yeah, the thing that worries me, I'm not overly concerned about the actual extension itself. What I'm more concerned about is what is the difference between loss of light and overshadowing? Because overshadowing doesn't mean to say you've lost your light. It is a bit darker, yes, but is it sufficient to say that there is loss of light? And that's my conundrum more than anything else. Not so much the actual extension itself. Is there a definition between the two or not? Because you understand what I'm saying, on a bright day, even though you're overshadowed, you haven't really lost light. What is the actual definition when it comes to, is it the overshadowing or is it actual loss of light, which say where a building's put very close where you do lose light, whereas this is a long way away and there's only actually shadowing at certain times of the day. Difficult one, I know.
I think I wouldn't say that one is any more important than the other. I think because there'll be some that it'll be down to the context of that individual site. So I agree with you that there will be cases where, for argument's sake, you're shadowed. Your property, your window could be shadowed by a tree, but there's still light getting through. So it's not that complete loss of light with a wall built right next to a window. I think there is also a consideration in terms of loss of direct sunlight, and I think that's the case that's being put forward here, is that the increase in the height would mean a loss of direct sunlight, and I think that again is different to just a standard loss of light. I'm not aware of I'm not aware that I can point to an absolute definition of which is which. And if I had to fall off the fence one way or the other, I would say that loss of sunlight in most cases is probably more important than a degree of additional shadowing, because you're right, it probably doesn't take away so much natural light, whereas you would if you're losing sunlight. But again, it's a matter of fact and degree, and in terms of how much sunlight is being lost on that property.
Right, thank you.
Sorry, I probably haven't answered that concisely.
No, you could.
I think in this case, what is being said predominantly is, and the slides from the neighbour demonstrated that we're not just talking about a loss of light; it's a loss of direct sunlight that comes over the top of that garage, and I think that's the question in front of members.
Thank you for that explanation. Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you. Can we just go back to that slide that was up there that showed the loss of light? No, the other one. The one which had the street plan. That's it, yeah. So am I right in thinking that north is to the top of that, or south is to the south, is to the bottom?
Yeah.
So number 14 is actually east of the house.
Yeah, correct.
So the south, midday sun isn't going to, number 10 is not going to overshadow number 14. It's only when you get to the kind of that line is actually sort of like, the evening sun, which probably isn't going to be that high anyway. So you're not going to have a huge amount coming across. And of course, in the middle of the winter, of course, it will affect. But for the most of the day, as far as I can see, I can't see that there's any overshadowing at all. So, I mean, as much as I accept the potential argument, I can't see that really fits in. Following from what Councillor Baldry said about, listening to parish council, like you, Councillor Baldry, I would be the first to listen to the parish council and the objectors, because I think that's really important that we do. But I can't see that this would stand up in an appeal. And I know that that's something we also look at here. And I mean, I have huge sympathy for people who find it difficult, but I think sometimes it might be less than they fear. And so I'm happy to support the application.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you. My point was largely made there about the alignment of west and so on. I would just add, though, that in midwinter the sun doesn't get north of west, so it doesn't affect at midwinter. It's in the summer that the sun gets north of west. So and then you've got more daylight anyway. So actually, I'm going to support the proposal too.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to add further comments? If not, we've got been moved and seconded for approval. So members, can you show all those in favour, please? Okay, Amelia. It's everyone but Councillor Foss.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
And against? Abstain? One abstention. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, members. I will now hand you back to Councillor Foss. Thank you.
We need a couple of minutes to change officers, mate.
Perhaps I
Right,
should
we-
just
we've
say
got-
that
we've got a couple of minutes to change.
recommendation's been approved.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Rowe. We've got a couple of minutes to change officers around and then we'll proceed, okay? Hello, Councillor Hodgson. I will say, well spotted. Right, the door. Yeah, yeah. Right, members, ladies and gentlemen, we'll proceed to the second application, which is application number 215622, full hire Farley Meadow, Deptford. And yeah, can we have Claire, please?
Yeah, you've got me as Charlotte. The case was being called away to another meeting. So the application that we went to see on Monday for an agricultural building at High Farley Meadow, Dipford. Just by way of an update, since the site inspection, we've had one third-party letter of objection that's been received since the officer report was finalised. The issues raised in that report are largely addressed in the report anyway, in terms of issues, but principally it was just raising concern about the lack of agricultural need for this building on what is quite a small holding of land. So just plan of the site hatched in red. The access, you may members who were on the site visit will recall we came in from the east. Aerial photograph gives you a bit more context. So if I just find my pointer, there we go. So yeah, application site in here, access from the main highway up here. As you can see, site surrounded largely by other agricultural fields. Not that much built development in the area. Here is the application site plan. As you can see, the agricultural building hatched in red with the existing hedge bank still there, which was noted on the site visit. Access from the lane is in here, and then the land extends going down the hill, and is showing proposed new Devon orchard at the bottom of the land. Elevations as submitted. Obviously, this is a retrospective application, so members have seen, but these are the formal plans of the building that have been provided. Quite a simple design with open fronted bays on the south and west elevations, and some photographs that were taken on a much nicer day than the day that we went, showing the building in situ. That's taken from the other side of the hedge bank. Looking into the side of the building, and just another one from within the site on the other side of the hedge bank looking into it. There isn't one taken from the lane because, as you'll appreciate from the site visit, you don't actually see the building very much depending on how strong the hedge vegetation is at the particular time of year. The principal issue that officers have with the application is not so much the visibility of the building within the landscape, but whether there is actually a need for it to be there at all in terms of agricultural need. As set out in the officer report, officers are not convinced that an agricultural need exists for the building at this time, and the recommendation is for refusal on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, have you any questions of the planning officer? Yes, Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Chairman. This might sound a bit controversial, but
What, you, Councillor?
I think there's a very changing field, for want of a better expression, in our agricultural purposing of land use, and I think a lot of the way we look at things potentially is large scale rather than maybe more smaller scale. And I wonder if it's appropriate to always just have one view, agricultural view, on the use of land. Because if you use a very small area, but maybe for fairly intensive purposes like horticulture, compared to 25 hectares for a number of cows, you end up with a very different need. And I'm just wondering how well assessed this is. I'm just throwing that one in there, and I don't know if you want to answer that or not, but I just, I'm slightly concerned, as you know, every time we get rural applications, how there seems to be one fairly straightforward kind of way of looking at it. And, hold my hand up, I'm an organic horticulturalist. And, I look at these things through a slightly different lens, and I'm just concerned that maybe we've got an influence that's coming in, which is from an agricultural viewpoint, that maybe we could have more than one viewpoint. And I don't know if that's been assessed in any other way other than the one consultant that we regularly use. That's the question.
I can sort of answer it, I think. We didn't actually consult our agricultural consultant on this particular application. We generally don't with the smaller scale agricultural buildings. We tend to only use them for the larger scale agricultural units and the agricultural workers' dwellings, which you, as you can appreciate, probably need a much higher degree of scrutiny in terms of the need. I can kind of see your argument that sort of you can't always take a one size fits all approach to it, but in the case of this particular application, they're not sort of proposing to do sort of intensive use of a small site in the manner that you're suggesting. So I'm not, and sort of officers are generally not persuaded that the need is there on this particular one.
Councillor Baldry.
When we were on site, there is within the applicant structure a former fire control pod, not from Devon and Somerset Fire Authority, I don't think. And outside there is a metal structure. They are not part of this application, I don't think. And the second question is, should they be?
They are not part of the application that you are just considering today. Whether or not they should be, or do they require planning permission, depends a bit on the applicant's exact intentions for them. I understand the agent is registered to speak, so that's a question you may wish to put to them.
The only thing I'd add, Councillor, is my personal opinion is that the container probably does require planning permission. Whether a vehicle parked on land requires consent or not will depend on whether the use of that vehicle. So if I can use an example, I haven't come across this type of vehicle very often in context. But if you've got a field and you put a touring caravan on it and you fill it with agricultural equipment or small bales or whatever, then the chances are that there isn't a change of use because it's still an agricultural use. So vehicles, there isn't a one size fits all with vehicles. It depends on what they're being used for. But absolutely, what's in front of us today is the application for the building and not the other vehicles and containers that are on site. We're just looking at the building.
Yeah, Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to ask the planning officer if you could go back to the shot that was of the site and the adjoining, the shot that was going down Farley Lane, going down towards the farm. That one, and the first one on the right, I think, is the site we're looking at. But there were other deposits of, I'm not quite sure what they've got, buildings there of some kind. Do they have planning permission, please? No, not the farm, up the lane.
The next lane, the next
Adjoining the lane, adjoining the site we looked at.
Where members have been before on committee site visits. My recollection is that the stables did have planning permission, but I can double check that. But my recollection is there was a permission for
I think,
stables there.
Yeah, and further on down as well, there's a building of some kind.
I'm afraid I don't know the building
thank
further
you.
down. The only time I've been there was with members for
When
that
we
site
looked
visit
at
some
that site
years
with
ago.
horses.
Councillor Smurden, and bear in mind we're still on questions of the planning officer or anything to do with the planning officer at the moment.
Yeah, this is just for this is I'm obviously not part of this decision, but this is just a point of clarity. So that it was all originally one site, the stables, etc. But I think possibly the parish council rep can bear this out. That it's since been sold. I think it's now split into three. You now have three different sites there.
Thank you, Councillor Smurden. Is there any more questions of the planning officer on the application for the barn? Barry.
Thank you, Chair. Is it appropriate to ask what opportunities the applicants have been given to address the main reason for the recommendation, i.e. the size and the need?
I think the basic answer to it is that we determine applications that are put in front of us, and we need to determine the application that's submitted. Given that in this case, given that the building has already been constructed, then I think there would be very limited opportunity for the application to change. My view is this application needs to be determined as submitted, as they all do now. Members have adopted the planning charter.
Okay. Any more questions? Well, maybe in a minute. We can always come back to the planning officer if we need to. Okay. Right. The next speaker I have here, as there's no objector, Mrs. Amanda Burden, to speak, please. You know the drill. 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, members. I act for Stephen Fearon, who, together with his family, own the 1 acre site. The land was purchased in 2019 with the sole intention of creating an organic, self-sufficient holding, whilst managing the land in an environmentally sensitive way. The applicant's aim was to rear a few goats for milk, a few sheep and pigs, as well as growing vegetables on the plot, whilst at the same time giving his young family the opportunity to be outdoors and enjoy the freedom and fresh air of the countryside. The applicant purchased the land with his life savings, showing his commitment to his aim for self-sufficiency, sufficient one. The applicant and his family live in Loddeswell in a Live West part-owned property, and this piece of land was the biggest parcel of land that they could afford within the local area. In 2019, when the applicant purchased the land, it was severely overgrown with brambles. It had remnants of a couple of poorly constructed corrugated tin shacks and a large amount of waste material that had been dumped on the land, and the applicant sought to clear that land and to return it to productivity. The applicant's passion for the land started many years ago when he attended Capel College, a leading environmental college where he studied land management and arboriculture. After clearing the land in 2019, the applicant then naively started constructing the storage and tools he was accumulating to manage the land, which would replace the ramshackle buildings that he had removed from the site. Unfortunately, whilst constructing the building, a roof timber fell on the applicant's head and neck, resulting in having a bleed on the brain and 2 weeks later a stroke. The applicant is now starting to regain fitness and recover from that stroke so he can return to the land and recommence his agricultural activities, grow his vegetables and crops and bring livestock onto the site. The applicant is devastated, not only that he's naively started to build an agricultural building without permission, but also that he's invested all his money in trying to create a self-sufficient organic agricultural holding that nearly cost him his life. The building is partially being constructed on the site, measures just 12 metres by 5 metres, and therefore has a floor area of 60 square metres, which is divided into 4 bays. The building contains the applicant's digger that he uses, which is under the tarpaulin, which he uses to move equipment, undertake fencing and general works around the site. A further bay is used for the storage of his tractors, and the other bays will be there for the storage of his hay and all of his equipment for his no-dig system, but hopefully to produce vegetables, salads and produce, as well as the other equipment the applicant will use on the site, including some animal feed. The former fire engine currently provides a small welfare facility with hand washing and to make a cup of tea, and the container a secure lockable store, both of which will be removed once the building is complete. The proposal meets the needs of agriculture and in our view accords with DEV 15 on a sustainability basis. It's not a normal agricultural holding to try and create a sustainable self-sufficient site. The applicant, Stephen Fearon, who's there on the left, who is here with me today, hopes that you will have faith in my words of his intention to develop the site and hopes that you will very much support the application for this modest agricultural building, which the planning officer has confirmed in her report is of a suitable agricultural design with a mono-pitch roof, simple cladding, and is located in front of a large hedge and is not obtrusive in the wider landscape, and therefore support the application and support the applicant in his road to recovery. The applicant intends to plant up the bank around the site and create a small orchard at the bottom of the field. I hope that therefore you'll support this application. Sorry, it's rushed. I need to fit a lot in.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Burden. Members' questions. Councillor Taylor.
Yes, good morning, Amanda. In your professional opinion, do you think really that you could do on this land what you've actually said? I mean, you're looking at hay, vegetables, pigs, sheep, goats, and it's 1 acre. So do you really think this building is necessary, in your professional opinion, this is, for this 1 acre plot?
I don't think we're talking about the stat. You know, I've got a degree in agriculture. That's my background and qualifications. So, as Councillor Hodgson rightly said, normal farmers have hundreds of acres that are growing hay. This guy wants to have a few goats, a couple of goats in the corner, a couple of pigs, buy in hay, if he can make some hay on the bottom level of grass, but the patch of green grass that you saw next to the building, for productivity, I know what I grow in my own garden. You would grow a lot of vegetables in that patch. The container, the tools that are in that container will then go in the building. The building was kind of half full, I would say, now, and that's without anything in it. That's without any animal food, without any storage. So I think we're talking about a different use. We're not talking about the large intensive or more intensive, farming units. It's self-sufficiency. It's organic. He has to compost his own manures. He has to grow everything from scratch. So in my professional opinion, I mean, it's what I said to my client this morning is I hope the committee will give him the benefit of the doubt. And that's what it comes to. We couldn't write in the report that he's got any stock, he's got made any hay, or that he's grown any vegetables, because he hasn't. He had a stroke and he died. So he needs your trust, in my words. He's there, sat there now, to support this. So it's an impassioned plea, really. We're not going to tell you he's done it, but he's got every intention to do it. I hope that's answered your question. Sorry.
Right, thank you. Any other questions?
Could I just also on Councillor Smurden's question about the ownership? There's 4 owners on the site. Four owners in the row.
Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify.
No further questions? Maybe later, but no, it'll come up for debate. Okay, thank you. Okay. Parish Councillor Barry Pomeroy, Parish Council. Oh, sorry, read the wrong line. I was going to say, done right, Deptford. Got one line too many, sorry.
Morning. Mr Chairman, members of the Council, I speak on behalf of Dipford Parish Council, which has objected to the retention of this large barn erected without planning permission. The applicant owns only approximately 1 acre of ground on which, in the Parish Council's opinion, an excessively large barn, apropos the area under ownership, has been erected. It is the belief of the Parish Council that, contrary to the statement in the design and access statement provided, this is in fact contravenes policy TTV 26 of Plymouth and South West Devon Joint Local Plan. Also, policy DEV 15.6 appears to be contravened. That plan supports the need for a provision of an agricultural building in the countryside that responds to an agricultural need. It's the Parish Council's position that there is in fact no proven agricultural need for this large barn. There has been no agricultural assessment of the application as far as we are aware, and cannot see that a holding of less than 1 acre, a large part of which is taken up by this barn, can be sustainable and profitable holding for the applicant. I would also like to state that if we go back to one of the pictures, the aerial picture, it in no way, no, there's one closer than that, I think. In no way does it show the gradient of the land, which, although where the barn is situated is relatively level, the rest of the holding goes down at a gradient like that I would hesitate to walk on. It's extremely steep, and I think it would be extremely difficult to cultivate. So Dipford Parish Council, of which I'm Vice Chair, urges refusal of this retrospective application. Can I also, Mr Chairman, clarify, is it Mr Weimer's question about the ownership of the land? Who was actually querying that?
Councillor Smurden, no?
Someone was. If you go back to the slide that shows the various holdings there, the applicant's agent, yeah, that one. The applicant's agent has stated that there are in fact 4 parcels of ownership there. The history of the site has a long planning history, of which this council will probably be, the whole site I'm saying, has a long planning history of which this council will be aware. There
I
was
must make you aware that we are only talking about as we're looking on
right.
for
Okay, as far as
the one to
parish
the east.
council is aware, there is planning permission for the stable building in the largest part of the site, but no other planning permissions have been granted.
Okay, right, that'll be for another day.
Thank you.
Any questions? Any questions, anybody? No? Okay, thank you very much. And we will now move on to Councillor Smurden, who of course is not taking part in this debate. He's just presenting as a ward member. And I believe we have a letter from Councillor Pano. Are you going to read that as well? Okay, right, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm afraid you've got two for the price of one, because obviously Councillor Panel's my co-ward member, and he's not able to be here. So I've got a statement which he's asked me to read out. So I'll do that one first. He says, I would be grateful if you could express my views at this committee. I've asked for this application to come to committee so members can decide whether the scale of this agricultural building is appropriate for the size of the holding on which it sits. I note that Ditford Parish Council object to the proposal on the grounds that there is no proven need for such a barn. This retrospective application is for an open-fronted building measuring 12 metres by 5 metres with a ridge height of 3 metres to serve a plot of approximately 1 acre. Do members feel a building of this size is appropriate or necessary for an agricultural holding of such a small size? Is this much space needed to store the tractor, trailer, tools, fodder and equipment required for 1 acre? I don't know if the digger is needed in connection with the small orchard, but surely once work here is completed, there will be no further need for the digger, nor for one to be stored in an agricultural holding. I asked the planning officer for the views of the council's agricultural consultant, but was informed that the plot was so small that it was not practice to consult them. Does this indicate that this is not a serious farming enterprise? My concern is that many South Hams fields are capable of being divided into a number of 1 acre plots. If each plot holder wishes to erect a barn of this size on their land, our fields could easily be filled with such buildings, having a significant impact on the rural landscape. I therefore ask the committee to consider whether such a development is commensurate with the rural nature of the South Hams and the needs of this holding. So that was Councillor Panel's statement. I would just add, originally this application came with a recommendation of approval, which neither Councillor Panel nor myself were prepared to delegate. Officers have since changed the recommendation to refusal, which we support, but we are quite content to have this decided by the DM committee. As you've heard from the Parish Council representative, Ditford Parish Council have repeatedly raised the issues of sporadic development at the various sites at Farley Meadows, with Councillor Panel and myself over several years now. We are both concerned that the building in question is too large for the site. The site shows no sign at all of the proposed agricultural operations for which the shed is supposedly required. And also subsequent to that, during the site visit, as other members have mentioned, I was further concerned at the appearance of the large ex-fire service vehicle, which is immediately adjacent and currently protrudes into the shed, plus the shipping container also on site, mentioned by Councillor Baldry. To sum up, neither Councillor Panel or myself are against having a shed on this site, but we consider that the one which is there is too large for the available land. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smurden. Yes, Councillor Hodgson.
Reference has been made to a change of view by the planning officer. It says in following an internal review, the officer recommendation is now for refusal. On what basis was it a recommendation potentially?
Councillor Hodgson, I'm going to bring in.
Okay, but that's where the
yeah, but
I think
Wyvern
to be
explained.
I think to be fair to Councillor Smurden, that wasn't a conversation he was involved in, so he wouldn't be able to answer that question. As with all applications that come to committee, and with a significant number of delegated applications, when a planning officer will draft a report, that would then come to a more senior officer, not necessarily me, depending on whether it's one of the planning officer or householder. And when senior officers looked at it, we came to a different conclusion, which is why there was a change in recommendation.
Okay. Any more questions?
Councillor Smurden, just to be clear, it'd be probably better if you just sat not at the committee benches whilst this is being debated, because I think you did say you won't be taking part. So just for clarity for anybody who's watching online, thank you.
Yeah, I should have spotted that. Thank you. Right, we're into the debate now. Thank you, Councillor Hodgson.
These hot potatoes, isn't it? Almost. I would, as I started earlier, questioning really the what lens we look through when we judge agricultural applications. One thing I would say is that while and I was really disappointed I couldn't come to the site meeting on Monday. I had to go to a transport panel appeal with residents, so I had to prioritise that, I'm afraid. But one thing that is with agriculture, it's a changing landscape. I mean, from the beginning of this month, just a few days ago, anybody with live birds has to have them inside. Has everybody got capacity to do that? People are really going to struggle. And I think those who are kind of looking towards Christmas with thousands of turkeys, and the turkeys not looking forward to Christmas either, but they probably don't realise. It's a very worrying time at the moment for a lot of farmers. We're looking at the weather that's absolutely outrageous. I've been on my land in the last couple of days, and you could hardly stand up for the wind and the rain flying at you. You do need cover if you're going to do any scale of agriculture. And this is, I don't know what was going through other people's minds, but to me, this looks like a very classic agricultural building, open front, so it's easy to open up and access, to cover things over, to keep things in the dry, to be able to bring animals in and out of the weather and the wind. It is the kind of classic small scale stuff, but the smaller your agricultural holding gets, proportion wise, the bigger the buildings look compared to the number of fields and animals you have. And it's different. This guy isn't talking about applying to have 3 cows in the field or anything like that. A couple of goats and some chickens and possibly some bees, and even bees these days actually are really suffering. We know we've got problems with the Varroa virus, etc. But actually, we've also not Varroa virus, the Varroa bug. But anyway, I was at an interesting conference a couple of weeks ago. We're talking about the thermal dynamics of a beehive, where beehives are really suffering these days because they need to be under cover. That was the outcome of that. So I think that we should give this applicant the benefit of the doubt. With our applications for agriculture, we often put a limitation. If it's not still used for agriculture in 10 years, then they face potential demolition. And I see no reason why that shouldn't be an opportunity. The let out that we have on this committee. I hear what the parish council say, and of course that's a fair view. But again, I think we're all unduly often influenced by what looks like large scale, what we think is normal farming, and I think it's a farming landscape that is rapidly changing. And I think we need to make allowance for changes, because in the bigger scale of picture, we've got climate change and biodiversity scaring the pants off everybody at the moment. And I think this is something where we maybe need to look at different ways of delivering agricultural use and farming use. And I therefore propose going against the officer's recommendation of refusal. I propose approval.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Nobody else is going to speak. I will. I went to the site, as was pointed out by the representative from the parish council. It's very steep. It's north facing, so any idea of growing any great quantity of vegetables or anything on there would be difficult. Yes, they could keep a few sheep, they could keep a few goats. Fine. The question is, do they need a shed that big? And I don't think they do. I think they need some storage. I understand what you're saying, Councillor Hodgson, about various things that are happening. But if we allow buildings of that size in the corner of every acre field, we live in an area of outstanding natural beauty, whether it's a designated bit or the rest of the South Hams. It's very much that. And we've got to bear that in mind. And I'm all for people starting up in, I'm a farmer, for starting up in farming. I've done quite a lot to help young farmers start and get on what is a very difficult ladder to get on, even onto the bottom rung. But the question of this we're looking at today, is that building the size it is applicable to that piece of land? And I just don't think it is. I mean, the shipping container would do a lot of what you could do on that site. And yes, I am trying to steer the committee because I should be voting with the officer on this one. It's not that I haven't got sympathy for the applicant. I have, but I just believe it's a step too far. The idea that we could have field after field after field with a shed that size in it. I know you say no, it couldn't happen, but it's creep. We've got it next door. But Councillor Smartin's already alluded to what's happening next door. A lot of that is not legal, not in planning terms at the present. That's a bit, and it's been split up again from when we saw it last. And this is what will happen. And yeah, we do need to look on our joint local plan at some of the issues that are coming up today, but we can't do that yet. But as we are at the moment, to my mind, that shed is too big for what the gentleman intends to do on that site. Much as I'm very sympathetic with what he wants to do, but that is my view.
So, sorry, Chairman, was there a seconder for Councillor Hodgson's proposal? No. Okay. And
if nobody else is going to, I'm going to propose that we go with the officer's recommendation on this one. Yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say something very similar to Councillor Foss, and while I've got every sympathy with the applicant and what Councillor Hodgson says.
Right, Councillor Rowe wants to speak.
Well, thank you, Chairman. Have you finished or not? Well,
if you want to carry on, yes, no.
I was going to say something very similar to what you said. While I have every sympathy with the applicant, I just don't think. I think this building is too big for the size of the plot, the acre, and we've got to be very careful about what we allow through on our rural areas. And I just don't think there is the agricultural need. So I'm happy to second, unless somebody else wants to. Well, thank you, Chairman. This is a retrospective application, and I think we have to think: would we have allowed this building there if it hadn't already been there, so to speak? Now, when we went to the site on Monday, I'm afraid I don't agree with people who say the building's too large, because it's not a very big shed, and it's pretty much full up with the gear which the owner is using. He's got a digger, he's got a couple of grass mowers there and various other bits and pieces. I don't think the shed's very big at all. And unfortunately, we're seeing this throughout the district. I've got in my vicinity in the parish, there are at least half a dozen of these small sites, parcels of land being sold off. Somebody's buying them, they're erecting a shed, they're keeping a couple of horses, perhaps a sheep and beehives, etc. And they're doing small scale farming. It's more sheep, I would say, we're farming, but quite a bit of it's horticulture. They are working the land if they can and growing various crops. And I think I personally have every sympathy with that. I think that people want to get closer to the land, to being outdoors. I would have liked to have done that myself, but I never had the opportunity. And it does cost a lot of money, which not everybody's got, which we can sympathise with. I have every sympathy with the owner of this building. And when you look around, there are a lot of these places being shot up and they've not even got planning permission, or if somebody doesn't object, they don't pick it up, they just carry on with it forever and a day. And this application has come in presumably because maybe somebody from the parish council or from the neighbour facility reported them and said, hey, you've got a shed there and you haven't had planning permission, so they report it and then they have to put in for proper planning permission. So whilst I have every sympathy with the applicant and the size of the building, which I didn't think was very big and not much bigger than a back garden shed, to be honest, you could put a couple of cars in there and you wouldn't get much more in there than that. So that's my view, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. I had a proposal for refusal. Since then, I proposed for to go with the officer's recommendation. Councillor Hodgson said has proposed the opposite. Have we got a seconder for either one?
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know. I've got both Councillor Taylor and Councillor O'Callaghan seconding, but I don't know who was first. I think it was possibly Councillor Taylor.
Councillor Taylor was
Yeah,
first.
right. So that was the first one, okay?
But we don't have a seconder for Councillor Hodgson's motion.
Okay, so we'll go with that. Yes, yes, Mr. Weimer.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to clarify one thing following something Councillor Rowe said. The fact that this application is retrospective should actually have no bearing whatsoever in this decision. You should be determining this application as if it hadn't have been constructed. The fact that it's retrospective is not a material consideration in this matter in any way, shape or form. Let's be absolutely clear on that. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. Okay. Anybody else got anything to say? No. So, to be sure, absolutely correct, we have got.
Chair, we've only got a proposer, which is Councillor Hodgson, to approve the application, but we don't have a seconder for that one. But we do have, to refuse the application, we do have a proposer, which is yourself, Chair, and seconder, Councillor Taylor.
Right, thank you. So can we have a show of hands for the recommendation that we go with the officer's recommendation, please? Okay, thank you. Those against? One against. And abstentions? One abstention. So that application is refused. Thank you very much, members. So we now move on to application number 2453. Do we need to swap officers?
No, but we do need to let Councillor Spurman come back.
Oh, yes, we do. Yes. Councillor Spurman, would you like to rejoin us, please?
I think he's trying.
Hemmed in by the leader, eh? Yes, Councillor Hodgson. Oh, yes, you did. Yes. Perfect. Thank you. Are we doing the other bits afterwards? Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Do you want to remember, Councillor Hodgson, we got the right, okay, that's fine. Just that's all right.
Councillor Hodgson, I'll come and find you when this one's done and we go to the next one.
Okay. Right.
I'm just using the facilities, but you don't need to stop clear carrying on. I'm just going to talk about, but you don't need to stop clear carrying on. I know. You can carry on.
Okay, all right. Right, we're going to move on now to the third application this morning, which is application number 2453. 22 HHO 36 Firs Road, Totnes. Would you like to present the case, Claire, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, you got me again as the case officer on this one. Has also been called away to another meeting today. So, application before you is a household application for a front extension to the existing dwelling. As you'll be aware from the report, the application has been put before you because the applicant is an elected member of South Hams District Council. So, map of the site, the existing property hatched in red. As you can see, sort of set within a broader area of established residential streets. Aerial photograph. So you point out there's some variation on themes in terms of the architectural styles in the area, and there's some sort of shared communal parking areas in the street scene as well. Here's the block plan submitted with the application, highlighting the footprint of the proposed extension to the front of the property. Here we've got the proposed elevations. This is the proposed elevations plan as submitted, but I've got another slide coming up, which is probably more helpful actually for this particular one. So here we've got elevation as existing of the North Elevation property, and also a photograph taken by the case officer for comparison. And then on the next slide, we've got the proposed front extension. So if I just use my pointer again. So this is the proposed extension to the front of the property. So as you'll see, this is the photograph of the front of the property as it is at the moment. So essentially it would come across all the way as shown on the plan.
Is that just underneath the windows, yes?
Yes. Series of photographs taken by the case officer just to show you the site context. The application property is the one highlighted in the red square. And this is one of the parking areas in the vicinity. So as you can see, there's sort of quite open views across the residential area. And just some other examples of photographs of properties within the vicinity. I think the point to make is that not all the properties are the same, but within each kind of block of houses, there is quite a strong degree of sort of symmetry. And they're sort of quite, you know, they are what they are, but they're sort of quite a pleasing street scene in the sense that there is a degree of uniformity within each of the sort of the blocks of residential form that you've got. So with this particular one, officers are of the view that the front extension, as proposed, would be an overly dominant and incongruous addition to this particular property in this particular location. Front extensions are always a bit difficult. They always require planning permission. Anything that's bigger than a porch requires planning permission, isn't permitted under the General Permitted Development Order. And the reason for that is because there is always that greater degree of potential for harm to the street scene if you're extending to the front, generally speaking. And unfortunately, this is one of the occasions where sort of the extent proposed on this particular property, officers don't feel is appropriate, and that's why it's recommended for refusal.
Thank you very much. Questions, points of clarity? Councillor Reeves?
Can we go back to the photograph of the front of the house, please?
That one? Or the one before?
Got a closer one, haven't you? So is that a garage or an outhouse, or what's that already there in front of it, or is that an extension?
It's an existing part of the property. I'm just checking. Apologies, not being the original case officer. It's part of the existing property at the moment.
So that's going to go, and then it's going
and
to
essentially it would be kind of replaced by
yeah, because it'll line up.
Yeah,
and go along.
I thought. I don't think we do actually.
Because you could say it would look tidier if it was, couldn't you? If that was gone and moved it around. That's
probably a comment for debate rather than a question.
Have we got a view of that terrace from the end, looking from in that gap with that outbuilding on sort of on your left hand side? Can you see what that looks like or not?
I don't think we do, unfortunately. Not in the photographs that I've got on the slide, unfortunately.
No, okay, thank you.
I think there might be one from the agent speaks.
Okay, we might see it, yeah. Okay, that's fine.
There's more photos to follow.
Yeah, Councillor Baldry.
A word about process, if I may. We have not got the views of the ward member on this application. The application is coming before us because the applicant is a councillor. Under normal circumstances, if you had written your report and recommended refusal and sent it to the ward member, if they had not responded, it would have gone through, wouldn't it?
Sorry, councillor.
I understand what he's saying. Yes, I do.
I mean, I'll do it. Sorry, Mr. Wyman. What I'm saying is, normally, if this would not have come to the committee, because if the officer had recommended refusal, and if the ward member had not responded, and the 5 days had elapsed, the recommendation would have just gone through as a refusal. It is only coming here for debate because of Councillor Sweet being the applicant.
That is correct. The reason the application is in front of us is because the applicant is a member of this authority, and as you're aware, the delegation scheme, any member or officer of the authority or immediate families applications automatically come to committee.
I'm not going to labour the point. I'm just saying, if it hadn't come before this committee, this would have been refused and signed off.
Only with agreement with ward members.
Yeah, and if the ward member had not responded, which they haven't, therefore...
Well, to be fair to the ward members, the ward members haven't responded because the report wouldn't have been sent to them under the scheme delegation because it comes to committee. So the ward members wouldn't have had the report to comment on. Obviously, they'd be aware that it's come to committee today and they could have come to committee to speak as a ward member. As a matter of course, they wouldn't have had the report to comment on because it comes straight to committee.
Councillor Roll.
I believe the ward member is the Berry Pomeroy ward member, which is Councillor Pennington. Yes. Yeah, if he's made no comment then or not answered.
I think we'll move on from that.
That's right, no.
Councillor Spurden.
With the caveat that I haven't been to the site, my looking of that picture would appear that the third window in from the left-hand side would appear to be part of that property, and that appears to be in the same line as the semi. So if there is an extension there, I don't believe it goes across the entirety of the property. Looking at that photograph, and with the caveat that I haven't been there.
Councillor Smearden, can you use your microphone, please?
Apologise. Yes, to continue that, if you go to the picture that shows the back of quite a lot of them, that there's quite a lot of porches there, which are sort of half the width of the existing house, but there isn't a full width extension across any of those. Is that correct? I mean, that would seem to be in terms of I mean, I don't know with regard to precedents and stuff like that, but no, it's not a precedent. Okay. I mean, from a personal point of view, the design which was shown looked reasonable, but sorry,
I'd leave it there for a minute, Councillor Spurden, and get your thoughts together. Yes.
Can I just offer some clarity? If you look at the design and access statement, that picture that Peter's alluding to, that building is actually an outbuilding very similar to the one for the applicant. It's on the design and access statement. So it's just an outbuilding.
Any other questions of the planning officer? Can you turn your mic off? I think, okay. No, right. We'll move on to, do we have no objectors?
No, the only speaker is Mr. Warren.
We got Mr. Warren as a speaker. You know, you have 3 minutes.
Okay,
Thank
good
you.
morning. Yeah. The applicant's home is located on the end of Firs Road, housing estate in Bridgetown, Totnes. Without a site visit, it's difficult to appreciate the general open plan and spacious layout of the whole estate, and that the dwellings are not always laid out in uniform lines and rows as you see in today's housing developments. It's also hard to appreciate that Firs Road has a gently sloping road which leads towards a steeply sloping car parking area located at the end of the cul-de-sac. Number 36 Firs Road is located towards the lowest southern end of the cul-de-sac. The property has the most number of steps leading down towards the front elevation and is set furthest back from the row of semi-detached houses. If you see in photographs A and B and A, B, C. The property is partly screened by an existing hedgerow and timber outbuilding. The estate was built around 1974. This house consists of 3 split levels within the property and also has a single-storey flat roof outbuilding located on the front elevation. Other houses on the estate have had their outbuildings located at the front, rear, or on the side elevations. Due to the topography of the existing estate, many of the properties can be accessed from both sides, and it's not always obvious which is actually the front and rear of the houses. And the majority of these proposed extensions are a monopitch pitch roof, seeing the photographs provided. Proposals: the monopitch roof is to encourage the maintenance-free way of keeping the extension watertight, but whilst also creating additional height within the height and space within the extension. The proposed roof will also be more resilient to climate changes. Roof lights will allow natural daylight and ventilation back into the rest of the existing kitchen, which is currently very dark due to it being low on the bank and facing north. The additional extra natural daylight into the proposed extension and house will be more environmentally friendly, and it will need less electric to light the property. Materials chosen match those materials used on the property and surrounding properties. Part of the front elevation will be hidden by the existing raised ground level, which is approximately 1 metre in height, and therefore will reduce the overall visual impact. Regarding the planner's concerns regarding the monopitch roof, we feel the extension fits in well with the relevant aspects of Chapter 13 of the SPD and Dev 20. There are several examples of properties with identical monopitch roofs that have been built with full width of the property, both located on the front and rear elevations around the estate. Due to the terraces and the semis being built in an open plan spacious way on the hill, these extensions do not feel incongruent or overbearing or setting a specific precedent as the original buildings are positioned in different locations. The officer has suggested a monopitch roof. Has insisted the monopitch roof to be used a flat roof design. We feel that the flat roof would be architecturally visually poor choice and would have a short lifespan, around 15 to 20 years, compared to a tiled roof which has 60 years plus. Yeah. We disagree, as there are several examples of properties in the slides I've provided with identical monopitch roofs built full width of the front, side and rear of the properties around the housing estate.
Thank you very much. Members, questions of speaker? None? Councillor Long.
Just one question. You seem to intimate that there was a flat roof extension would have been acceptable.
That the plan officer, the plan officer intimated that the flat roof extension across the whole width would be more acceptable than a monopitch roof.
And can you confirm as well? You showed some photographs of properties with extensions of full width? How
Yeah.
close are they to this particular property?
If we go back a slide a minute, please. So that's literally 1 minute walk from the applicant's property in Meadow Close. That's a front conservatory extension. And if we go back again, that's literally at the rear of that property along Dukes Road, which is another 30-second walk towards it. And then further up from Dukes Road, I secured planning permission on this house second on the right for that proposed front extension and driveway.
Anybody else? No? Right, thank you very much. Right, members. We have no other speakers too. We can't have a ward member, can we? No, right, okay, so we're going to go straight into the debate. Yep. Yes, Councillor Abbott.
So, street scene with a square block on the front just seems less appealing to me than this first extension on this set of semi-detached houses with a sloping roof. It just seems to me to fit in better. We're not talking about precedent, of course, because we never do. But to see that there are examples on this estate, well, so this is the first one in this place, and well, it doesn't seem to me to be an issue. Much better. It seems to be an improvement on what's there already. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Reeve.
Yes, I feel it's an improvement, and I don't like flat roofs, so I think this would look much nicer, and I would put it up for approval. I agree with I go against not refusal.
Councillor Abbott, were you offering approval, or Councillor Reeve has
I will anyway,
have done
yes.
approval?
Yeah.
Are you're seconding, yes? Right, okay. Any other members wish to speak on this? Yes, Councillor Baldry.
Personally, I would have, as the speaker said, I would have benefited from a site visit, because I think that would have got it into context rather than just having for the pictures. But I don't see any problem with this. I'm happy to support the proposal and seconder for approval.
Thank you, Councillor Baldry. We did discuss whether we needed a site visit, and the conclusion of us was that there were more than enough adequate photographs. But it's always a fine line. It's always this for want of a better way, traipsing around the countryside looking at sites when sometimes you think they're very well worth doing, as was the previous application, or they're not. But we didn't, and I've got a proposal for opposite to the officer's recommendation at the moment for approval. Is there anybody else got anything to say on that? And before I do that, I need to consult Mr. Weimer if we're going against officer's recommendation. Are there any conditions or whatever you wish to put in?
Before we jump to conditions,
right?
I think we need to have something from committee members as to the reasons why we're going against the recommendation. And then yes, I'll quite happily suggest some conditions, but I think we probably need to do it in that order.
Well, I thought both the proposer and seconder had, maybe not in planning terms, made it very explicit that they thought it was an improvement. But if we need to get some specific planning reasons,
can I suggest that the proposer and seconder look at the reason for refusal, which is relatively concise, and I suspect there is a form of words that could come to set out why you disagree with that reason for refusal.
Well,
Councillor Abbott, or
no.
Well, I would exactly the reason for a proposal does not respect the pattern of development within the existing street scene. Actually, my view is that it does respect the pattern of development within the existing street scene. It doesn't represent an incongruous addition. It actually is an improvement, not. So I would disagree with the word incongruous. I think it's a pleasant improvement on the locality. And I can't speak, therefore, to the Dev 20 because I'm disagreeing.
I think what you're saying, correct me if I'm, is that fundamentally it's acceptable in the street scene. It's an improvement and therefore complies with Dev 20, which looks to about improving design. So that's fine. I just needed to hear it in that sort of concise way.
Councillor Reeve, do you wish
You
to?
put it in much better words than I would have. Thank you.
Anything you wish to add to
No,
that, or are you
no, I
quite
agree
happy
with
with
that,
that?
thank you.
Right.
If I can help with conditions,
I would hope you would. Yes.
Standard time limit, which is standard condition, completion in accordance with plans. A condition setting out that the recommendations within the ecology report are carried out, because the ecology report mentions, I've got it to hand, but there's definitely some recommendations within the ecology report that we would expect to see those followed. And then there should be an informative about drainage, but not a condition. But I don't see that there's a need for any other conditions other than those three, which I think would be standard for this sort of application.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor?
Yeah, thank you. Can I just ask about the materials? Because we've got hung, it looks to me as if there's something hung there that, can we condition that the materials actually fit with what's already there?
Well, I'd expect the materials are shown on the plans, so and we wouldn't need a specific condition about materials because it'd have to be built in accordance with the approved plans. So, but if you want us to go through what the materials are set out on the plans, we can do that now.
I was just thinking that a lot of these got hung tiles or whatever it is on the front. It looks to me. I mean, I haven't been down there, but so obviously the new build would need to be the same to fall into line with that.
Can you do a closer picture up?
The materials, yeah. What?
That's fine. The proposal, because as you can see, it's tile hung effectively first floor and rendered on the ground floor. The proposal is to have roof tiles to match the existing, and when you look at the proposal, the roof tile element would be with the backdrop of the tile hung wall, so those tiles would match. It's white PVC soffit and fascias, which appears to be similar to what's there now. The walls, so they would be render, sponge finish, smooth and painted. What I would suggest would be the same as the existing, and windows white UPVC, which I would suggest in that age and style of estate again would be appropriate. So I don't think we need to do an additional condition around materials. I think we just need to say completion in accordance with the approved plans.
You happy with that, Councillor Taylor? Right, thank you. Everybody else had all it right. Okay, we're going to go to the vote. Just before we do go to the vote, normally as chairman I try and support the officer in their recommendations, but I consider this is one of those finely balanced things that we've talked through. So I will be joining you in the way you vote. So can I have a show of hands for this application for approval, which is against the officer's recommendation? Can I have a show of hands for that, please? Thank you. Any against? No. Any abstentions? No. Well, one abstention. Okay, so that application is approved. Thank you, members. If you'd like to go and find Councillor, we could 5-minute break. Do we need a break? I know you've got a big.
Well, if there's no questions, probably no more than 10 minutes.
Well, in that case, we'll carry on.
No, we'll have a 5-minute break.
No, we haven't been here 2 hours yet, so we'll carry right on through.
The Vice Chairman needs to
On. The vice chairman says we're going to have a break. Right, members are back. Mr. Warner, would you like to go through the appeals, please?
I will. Shortlist today, just 3. I'll do them in the order. The first one at 5 Pennywell Close at Landscove. That was it's a bit of a strange one. It was a change of use of an area to the back of the dwelling to garden. The inspector considered that it wouldn't cause any harm to the visual appearance if that small area was taken in as the garden. I think it's one of my personal view. It's probably one of those 50-50 ones. That I think that other neighbours had done it without actually making applications. And whether if this had been refused, I think it would open a can of enforcement worms. Councillor Hodgson.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is my ward, and it was a really interesting debate. They were a good parish council, Staverton, and it was like, well, it's not such a big thing, but at the same time recognising quite an elevated site. So you've got like this, area of Pennywell Close, which is all kind of all around Landscove Village Hall, but it's quite high. So from the bigger landscape, it even just like a couple of trampolines and bits and things like that are quite visible, and it was breaking that line, which was quite a kind of a careful line, and it's. The sad thing is, but because it's come through an appeal, I assume there's not going to be an opportunity to kind of condition things like screening, because actually some screening of a hedgerow just being put along the end there could have made a massive difference. So I suspect it's just no. So it's like it's left as quite a raw kind of looks slightly messy, to be honest.
Would there not been some asks for? I mean, I went through yesterday's procedure and all the conditions were sorted out, whichever way that was to go. Because we went through that yesterday with the appeal in here yesterday, and the inspector went down through a whole list, and he was quite pedantic about it. That's all.
He will be, and the interesting thing is, obviously only if it's approved. But if it is approved, it will then be interesting to see how many of those conditions he accepted, and then or kicks out. The second one is a site I'm sure members are aware of. In fact, I'm sure we did a site visit there at some point. Probably not for this application, probably for the previous application. This is Summerlees at Tolcombe. This was the non-determination appeal, but I know that came to members to consider how we would take that forward in terms of whether we would have said if it stayed with us, it'd be approved or refused. I'll start with the positive. The positive is the inspector didn't consider that the council acted unreasonably, so there was no costs awarded. My recollection is the members' main concerns were the loss of daylight and sunlight to neighbouring properties, and the inspector went through it and considered that. And on this case, there was, and I don't know whether that was referring to Councillor Long, there was a daylight sunlight study that went into the nth degree in terms of how many minutes would it be lost in certain months. The inspectors clearly said there will be an impact on the south-facing windows, and whilst the reduction in light would be clearly noticeable, the proposal would not result in any significant harm. And I have to say, well, I don't have to say, but I will say it anyway. My opinion is that the impact on the neighbours in this one, where the appeal has been allowed, would be far greater than the impact on the one in front of you this morning. And I think that I think that's something that this is almost the bar that we need to be looking at. That if the inspector thinks this is acceptable, then I think ones that like this morning would be. I think whoever said it was very right. It'd be very difficult to.
Well, that's
to
what I was
demonstrate.
getting at with my question about light and shade, and you know, when we were looking at where earlier on. Yeah.
I'll happily defer to any questions from the ward members on that one if you want.
I suppose my the only issue I had was the sort of cursory point about the impact on the solar panels and and there obviously was, and the fact that inclusion of solar panels somehow resulted in no net loss of low carbon solar generation, which obviously I dispute that we're looking to increase. So a like for like. So I was disappointed in that particular aspect of it, and I still think it will be interesting to see the loss of light from such a development when it does go ahead.
I think. Sorry, I just on that, but I'll.
Yep. Well, I think unfortunately we went off down a rabbit hole on the wrong one on this application, and that we should have concentrated more on massing and design, because it's a pretty monstrous design in Drake Road where access is severely constricted, and where the houses necessarily need to be small because it's that kind of an area of Salcombe. And I just think that this house, if it ever gets built, if it doesn't fall off the hillside as they're building it, because that's the other thing, this hillside there is very unstable. And already the next door but one neighbour has had a terrible problem with land falling away. It's just not going to look happy on the plot at all. It's going to completely dwarf the other houses and look completely out of place. So it's a shame that we are where we are, but we are, and unfortunately the inspector didn't see things like we did. So, but I think equally well it could have gone the other way, myself.
Yeah, I think the only additional comment I want to make on that one is, I think once, for want of a better phrase, Dev 32 plus is been adopted by all three authorities moving it forward, I think there is then a stronger argument in guidance terms about increasing solar generation, whereas I don't think we're quite in that policy place for this particular one.
Well, when we get the climate emergency planning statement, please don't call it Dev 32 plus. When that swings into action, the applicant would have had to show too how the embedded carbon could be offset over the next 25 years if they're going to rebuild. So I think the whole project would have been less viable under that when that comes into. But still, we are where we are, aren't we?
Come into effect
1st of December. Anything registered after the end of November, so de facto the 1st of December.
Absolutely, and just hoping that we have some strong inspectors and do realise that and do accept that whilst it's only guidance, it's a significant material consideration and backers, but we'll see. The last one is Cliff House, Hope Cove. Actually, I think this is a really good decision. Looking at elements of it, they said that the front balcony was okay and fitted in, but the zinc roof cladding for the wraparounds and the extension would be heavy and dark, jarring against the existing materials, and it would lead to a visually dominant extension that detracts from and completes with prominence with the host property, and therefore would have an adverse impact on the character and appearance of the area, and the A and B. I thought that was actually a really well written appeal decision that really did grasp the issue. So that was pleasing. So unless there's any questions on that one, that's the appeals update.
Into the undetermined major.
As per usual, I don't intend to go through this on line by line, but if anybody's got any questions about any of them, I'll try and answer the question.
Looking at it,
I thought that was the one that had been built out, and we're still waiting for the 106 agreement to be signed, and that had to wait for the land ownership issues to be resolved.
I thought that had been done.
I'll check with Charlotte.
I think you need to check it, because I think it's been done. All right.
It's with me to write to the applicants to suggest they withdraw the application.
Right.
And I did actually say that it's a, you know, an old thing that can be discarded, because about 6 months ago, so it's, yeah.
Well, this is what I was coming to, because, we've got, it's the same with some of our enforcements and that. There's some on there that I try and get rid of them occasionally when we meet up, but it's things that we don't, some of it is no longer need to be there, really.
The delay's entirely with me, Chairman. I'll hold my hand up to that.
Any others? Yeah, Councillor Taylor.
Sorry, Patrick, I keep bringing this one up, and this is the Moorview Torum Park. It's been in the offings for like 2.5 years now, and we don't seem to be moving on anywhere on that one.
There is movement. Can I have a conversation with you outside?
Yes, fine.
Councillor Pearce.
Yeah, with Brimhay Bungalows, do we have to ask their permission to dispose of this application? Because if there's been no movement on the Section 106 agreement since whenever, and it's up to them to move on it, can we just not give them notice that unless they sign up within, I don't know, 3 weeks, we're going to dispose of it?
Yes, but we still have to write to them to say that's what we're going to do. So it's not necessarily getting their permission, but we do need to give them notice that that's what we're doing. We can't just.
Can I suggest a standard letter? So all you've got to do is, you know, run it off and put the right details in.
Dartington Parish Council is meeting tonight, and if you'd like me to cut through this and just say, would they like to give notice that they are, you know, what would be the right expression, withdraw?
If for members who aren't aware, this was approved by the committee subject to a 106 agreement. Yes. The 106 agreement would have been difficult to complete because it would need the landowner to sign it, and I think that's where it and the alternative scheme has now pretty much been built out, is my recollection. So
built out and moved into.
So if they're happy just to drop me an email saying please withdraw the application, that's all they need to do.
It's withdrawal.
They can withdraw it, yes.
Because for those of us who were involved in the first place, we can remember, you know, it will stick in our mind for a long time, that particular one.
Definitely.
Yeah,
but
because it was fraught at the time, and I mean, we're through it and gone by now, but it's one that sticks in your mind.
Well, the worry is, of course, the wildlife corridor has been illuminated by all the new houses. It seems to be fine, but you know that there's no animals in there anymore. Anyway,
no, just the reaction of the local community.
But is it because it's not their agreement? I mean, how can they withdraw the 106 when it's not their?
No,
they're the applicants.
They're not withdrawing the 106. They are the applicants. So they are withdrawing the planning application.
But it was passed.
Yes, but it was passed, but no decision was issued because the 106 agreement couldn't be completed.
I'm just trying to get the wording right for
so
them
so
because it's a parish council.
they can withdraw the application.
Fine, okay.
Because you can withdraw an application up until the date the decision is issued.
Oh, okay, so the decision was never issued because the 106 was never
Correct.
completed.
That's right. Yeah.
Thanks, Baldry.
Churchill, Holberton, it's a fairly major development by our standards, 14 dwellings. Dan and I were persuaded to sign it off in the interest of getting things done in a hurry. I don't know why we bothered.
My understanding, it's a
place like Holberton, 14 dwellings is quite a lot. We were persuaded, and the parish council were happy. We agreed to delegate it, and why bother?
Because it would be unusual to start doing a lot of Section 106 work and put the applicants to the cost of 106 work without the application being resolved to approve, and it's going through the 106 now.
Councillor Smurden.
I'm going to take this opportunity to ask a really technical question with regard to 313622 OPA, which is the former Dairycrest site. I've sort of looked through this.
Sorry, is that on the list of undetermined major?
Well, it's here for comments, etc.
Okay.
Anyway, well, I'll ask the question, and then you can I hope you can answer it. I've searched through. Perhaps Mr. Weimer can explain. Does vacant building credit apply on this site?
That is one of the issues we're going to have to consider as part of the application. I can't give you a definitive answer. There is a reasonable argument that vacant building credit could apply, but that's something we'll need to consider, and it'd be wrong of me to give any further comment at this moment in time in this forum.
Okay, thank you.
Any more for any more? Councillor Hodgson there.
What vacant credit is, vacant building credit is.
If you Google it.
Okay. Fundamentally, vacant building credit is a mechanism by which you can offset delivery of affordable housing by claiming vacant building credit for buildings that are vacant on the site. So if you've got 5,000 square metres of vacant buildings, and if vacant building credit applies, that reduces your affordable housing requirement by 5,000 square metres. Is the base of it.
Okay. Any more for any more?
But clearly, on any application where vacant building credit is being claimed, not just this, any application, we will scrutinise that to make sure that it is correct, because obviously the last thing we want to be doing is accepting on face value loss of affordable housing. So it's a valid question, but it's just a little bit too early in the process to actually to give you an answer, I'm afraid.
Am I missing something?
It isn't a local policy.
Right, I think we've stretched this far enough. Nobody seems to be jumping up and down saying they want to ask a question of Mr. Weimer. So,
Can we get rid of the screening?
yes. Can we shut down on the screening now? I'll close the meeting and